I'm doing everything in my power to blunt Putin's gas price hike. I travel the world trying to put things back together. You know, Trump did not leave a very good situation. Republicans in Congress are still in the grip of the ultra-MAGA agenda. They still refuse to consider changing any part of the Trump tax cuts. Under my plan for the economy, we've made extraordinary progress. And we put America in a position to tackle a worldwide problem that's worse everywhere but here. I don't want to hear any more of these lies about reckless spending. We're changing people's lives.
That was President Biden yesterday, deflecting blame in the wake of inflation not seen in this country in over 40 years. And it comes as many lawmakers are slamming the Biden administration's economic policies and big spending for contributing to the soaring inflation. Among the critics, South Dakota Senator John Thune and Congressman Dusty Johnson.
I'm so disappointed with the president's rhetoric. His idea of breaking inflation is just by spending trillions of dollars more. Then, yeah, we're going to stand against that. That is only going to make things worse.
The inflationary pressures that we're seeing in the country today have everything to do with the president and his policies, and the American people are paying the price for that.
And the New York Post editorial board with these headlines: Biden pumps out more economic baloney, and Biden's denials on the economy assure Americans more pain down the road. Our power panel joins us now. Mercedes Schlapp, ACU founder, Foundation Senior Fellow, and former Trump White House advisor for strategic communications. Hello. And David Carlucci, former New York State Democratic senator. Welcome to both of you. David, how do you defend this? When you stop people in the street and ask them about skyrocketing inflation, soaring gas prices, they're not blaming Vladimir Putin. They're blaming current leadership.
Well, it's easy to point fingers and try to figure out who to blame. But the reality is presidents have little impact on the stock market or inflation. I mean, we just have to point to Donald Trump, who invested over $2 trillion in stimulus in the CARES Act. So this isn't just President Biden. This is a contribution of President Trump and President Biden overstimulating the economy.
Mercedes, that sounds like another deflection of blame, just like we're hearing from the White House. And the American people are just not buying it. You see what is happening in some of these most recent races, and you look at all the polling leading up to the midterm election. Inflation is the top issue, and most people blame big government for the problems that we're seeing.
Well, you're looking at the fact that it's
a Mercedes.
So it's who is in charge, and that's who the voters are going to look to. They're going to look to the President of the United States, to those Democrats who are in charge of both the House of Representatives and the Senate to get things done. And the American people are feeling the pain. You look at the poll numbers, as you mentioned, Sandra, nearly 80% of American voters blame Biden. They don't blame Putin. They don't blame Trump for the inflation surge, for the gas price surge. And in essence, it is hurting their bottom line. And so for Biden, where I think he has not been able to lead effectively, he hasn't been able to bring Republicans and Democrats together to find a solution. His solution has been Build Back Better, which we know failed, thank God, because of Senator Joe Manchin and the Republicans. What would that have done? More spending, more of these environmental type of subsidies, because they're more focused on trying to strangle even our energy industry from being able to perform effectively and make sure that our country would be energy independent once again. Yeah. And I think the Democrats have ended up focusing more on their radical agenda than they have in trying to solve these economic problems.
Okay, so David, even CNN's Don Lemon is not buying it, as White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre tries to spin the blame on inflation. Watch this.
We got to remember, we're thinking about gas prices and food. This is coming from Putin's war against Ukraine.
Okay, I understand that. But even listen, before Putin the war started, I remember when the first bombs dropped. Economists do cite the war in Ukraine and supply chain issues. Does the Biden administration bear some responsibility for this?
I mean, David, when you've lost the mainstream media, you've lost Don Lemon. Where do you go next?
Well, I wouldn't go so far that we lost Don Lemon. He's asking some simple questions.
He was not buying the White House explanation for why this president can't bring down prices.
It's a multitude of factors. Like I said, with the CARES Act, with more stimulus spending.
Okay, David, people hear you and they just want to know this. Does the president bear any fault for the sky-high inflation and gas prices we're experiencing today?
I really don't think that we can blame the president for inflation that's happening internationally. And I believe the president is doing the responsible thing, not just looking at short-term gains in the stock market, but looking at the long-term gains in quality of life of the American people.
Let Mercedes
And the
respond.
answer is not just to drill more or exploit the environment. The answer is to do the hard things, like making sure that we are on track in an international
one quick point before I move
David,
on. Mercedes, go. Yeah.
David, so it's the typical line from the left where it's like, okay, families, let's try to change your behavior. Yes, go buy an electric vehicle, which we know is very unrealistic for American families in many cases to spend $56,000 to buy an electric vehicle. What's happening with the Democrats is you all are trying to force a change in behavior when we're not ready to move in that direction. We can invest in energy renewable sources. At the end of the day, we are still dependent on fossil fuel. We're still dependent on oil and natural gas, and we should be able to utilize those resources while at the same time make sure we're environmental stewards. We can do that, but we are in a moment when if we are not energy independent, it really impacts our national security. It weakens our national security and our economic security.
All right, so a lot of debate still to happen there. Meanwhile, the Department of Education has launched a council for parents to engage in their children's schooling. It comes after a wave of parents demanding more input during protests at school board meetings across the country. Supporters welcome the council's creation and says it will help bring diverse parent voices together. But critics say conservative voices are totally excluded.
What we have here is the Biden administration going to the establishment groups in order to basically get yes people. There are some nice groups in there, but for the most part, they're establishment groups. And so this is not the answer. And the Biden administration is just desperate.
And the new council actually includes people that supported that controversial letter from the DOJ suggesting concerned parents are akin to domestic parents. So, Mercedes, how do you think this will go?
Look, I think that the White House producer, the Department of Education, literally had to take some sort of action. But in essence, they created a safe space for their lefty education groups that support the administration. And I think really where they should break through is bring in these diverse voices. Let's bring in these groups that have been out there going to the school board meetings, supporting these parents to fight against critical race theory and the gender confusion agenda that the Democrats are pushing through. Look, it's a little too late. I really think where we can find bipartisan support is when it comes to ensuring mental health resources are available for our children.
You know, David, bottom line, parents want to be in control of what is happening in the classrooms. They were told at some points that they were not in control of what would happen inside those school classrooms. Final thought from you.
The Department of Education is doing the right thing. This is an unprecedented step to try to have inclusion, to make sure they're defining what does it mean to have parents and families engaged, and how do you hold districts accountable? This is a long time coming. It should have been done under the Trump administration. It wasn't. Finally, you have this panel to have parents at the table to have a voice in how their children are being educated.
People just want to know that all voices
diverse.
will be welcome at that table, right, David?
You have public and non-public advocates advocating here at the table, and this is going to hold some accountability to the over $100 billion in stimulus funds through the American Rescue Plan that's going to education to make sure that families and parents are included. And it's not just about the administrators and teachers. It's a collective responsibility between teachers, parents, administrators. All of them have to be included to make sure our children get the best education possible.
And that should be the goal for all of us. David and Mercedes, thank you very much to you both.
Thank you.
Okay. As the border crisis rages out of control, morale among Border Patrol agents reportedly is lower than low. Now the Biden administration plans to punish some of them for what the agents say was doing their jobs. Plus this.